A woman is bludgeoned to death in her home and her supposed assailant is shot dead. But was that really the true story? Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Donnah Winger. Viewer discretion is advised. It was August 29th, 1995, in a home in Springfield, Illinois. A man named Mark Winger calls 911 in a panic. He says that someone just entered his home and bludgeoned his wife over the head with a hammer, and so Mark says he had to take out his gun and shoot the assailant, and he shot him in the head. Police quickly arrive along with some ambulances, and when police enter, they do in fact find a very chaotic scene. There is blood everywhere. Blood pools on the ground, in the carpet. There's blood spray on the walls. There is a gun on the table. The bloody hammer is sitting on the ground. And in the middle of all of this, you've got two people, a man and a woman, both unconscious. The paramedics are unable to revive the two individuals there at the house, so they load them up into the ambulance and rush them to the emergency room. But unfortunately, they are not able to save either patient, and both of them would be pronounced deceased. Mark Winger says that on that afternoon, he was downstairs in the basement. He was doing a workout when all of a sudden he heard some thuds or some loud noises coming from upstairs. Then a big boom and a crash, and so he says he runs up the stairs. He looks into his baby's room. He sees that his baby is just fine. Nothing seems to be out of the ordinary there. But then he goes further into the house, and he sees that his wife is being attacked by a man who is swinging a hammer at her. He had already grabbed his pistol just in case he needed to defend himself. And so as the man is striking a hammer over his wife, Donnah, he points the gun at the guy and shoots him in the head. Back at the house, police are trying to collect as much evidence as they can. And there is a lot of it. There's a lot of blood. There is the gun. You have the hammer. They also find the ID or the wallet of the assailant in the house. And on the kitchen table was a yellow coffee mug, which would later be identified to belong to the so-called assailant. Well, he was identified as Roger Harrington, and the woman who was bludgeoned over the head with the hammer was Donnah Winger. So who was Donnah Winger? Donnah Winger was born on November 10th, 1963. She was actually born in Hollywood, Florida. She grew up in a really loving home. She had successful parents. She had a couple of siblings. She got everything she ever needed. She was a spunky kid growing up, full of energy, full of life, always just a super happy person, and someone who also valued family. She adored her siblings and her parents. They were a very close family. Donnah at one point said, I want to start my own family. I would like to find a husband and I want to have a child. And everyone said that Donnah would be this perfect mom. I mean, she was really made to be a mother. Well, she would end up meeting a man named Mark Winger. Mark was a well-standing citizen. He was a nuclear engineer, very intelligent guy. Donnah herself actually worked in operating rooms at a hospital, but everyone was impressed with Mark. Her family, loved him, said he was a great guy. On the surface, everything was great. They got married in 1988, and from everyone's account, they had a really happy, good marriage. They eventually would settle down in Illinois, and people in that community where they lived, everyone loved them, everyone adored them. People said that this was truly the perfect couple. But the one thing that was kind of in the way was the fact that they wanted to have a child, but unfortunately, Donnah found out she could not have children. And that was devastating. But it wasn't the end for them, because they decided, we'll adopt someone. And in 1995, that's exactly what they did. They adopted a little girl, and they named her Bailey. Finally, now, Donnah had her dream life. She has a husband who she loves. She has a new baby girl that she adores. She was excited to take Bailey to Florida to visit her parents all the time. Bailey's grandma and grandpa absolutely doted on her. They loved her to pieces, and they loved every opportunity they got to spend with not only Donnah, but also their new grandchild. And actually, she went to visit them in August of 1995. So Donnah and the baby went to Florida. Mark stayed back at home. On August 23rd, 1995, Donnah arrives back home. She gets to the airport, and she is picked up by a shuttle service. Like, it's this big van that will basically take you from the airport to your home. Well, on this particular ride, she was in the company. The driver was named Roger Harrington. And when Donnah got home and spoke to Mark, she was really unsettled because Roger Harrington really kind of unnerved Donnah. He was a very strange guy. Roger told her on this drive that he would speak to a god named Dom. He would speak of having these out-of-body experiences, especially while he was driving, which frightened Donnah. And he was, in fact, driving erratically on this particular trip. He had said things about killing people and talked about car bombs and mutilating people. He was a weird guy, very uncomfortable, and obviously kind of scary. So she asks her husband, Mark, would you file a complaint with the shuttle company? And Mark does that. And from this, Roger Harrington is suspended from his job pending an internal investigation into him. Which takes us to August 29th, 1995, just a week or so after Roger Harrington was basically fired from his job. Well, now he ends up at the Winger household, and now he apparently swings a hammer and bludgeons Donnah over the head. I mean, it makes sense, right? It was because of her that he lost his job. And so when police learned about this backstory, they said, okay, this is it. I mean, this is pretty cut and dry. Roger Harrington's car was parked out front of the Winger house. When they looked inside, they found a note, and it mentioned the Wingers, and it had their address on it. It looked like he had found out where they lived and went to the house to take his revenge on this family for getting him fired. So really, it was cut and dry. Like, Roger did this. He killed her, and Mark was the hero who... Well, he unfortunately couldn't save his wife, but did end up killing the bad guy. The police end up clearing Mark Winger of any responsibility in this. And really, at this point, it's a matter of just filing the paperwork because the killer in this case is dead. They wrote down on the homicide report, this was a revenge killing. And then Roger Harrington, they listed his death as self-defense. Mark Winger had shot him in self-defense. But then Roger Harrington's family kind of stepped up, and his mom and his siblings said, this does not sound like Roger at all. One of his sisters tries to go to the detectives and say that something about this doesn't sit right with her. He actually looks at her and says, quote, ma'am, anytime you want to know how your kid brother walked in that home, snapped, and killed that woman, come by my office and I'll show you step by step, end quote. One detective was very certain that this case was closed. It was over. But another detective, who also was assigned to the case, was having some doubts. He also discovered that the hammer in question wasn't even Roger Harrington's hammer. It was the Wingers. It belonged to them. The gun that was used to kill Roger was obviously Mark's. The little post-it note that they found in Roger Harrington's car, it looked like he had written down a time and like this was like a prearranged meeting. Like he was going there because he was invited. Why would he write down the time? This didn't seem like a stalker who found the house. This looked like someone who was going there for a meeting. Mark Winger, meanwhile, is now a single father. And from what everyone says, he remains a good father. He took care of Bailey, but he would end up hiring a nanny and because he needed help. And eventually, Mark fell in love with the nanny. Her name was Rebecca, and they would actually end up getting married. And they had 2 more kids together. Mark's life was finally back on the upswing. And everything seemed like it was done. Their hands are washed of this. It's over. And then, 4 years later, it isn't. All of a sudden, a woman named Deanne Schultz comes forward to police. She comes forward to police with a secret that she has been holding deep for 4 years now. Mark is not who he says he is. Not really. Mark was cheating on his wife, Donnah, before she was killed Well, who was Mark cheating on Donnah with? Well, me, she says. Deanne Schultz. Donnah and Deanne were actually friends. There's actually a photo of Deanne holding their baby and just sort of kind of fitting in with the family, and she was really close. She then tells detectives Mark was desperate to get out of this marriage with Donnah. He did not want to be with her anymore, and he actually talked about killing Donnah frequently. And as a matter of fact, Deanne says that they talked about, or he asked her if he would assist in a murder plot against Donnah. And one of the detectives, actually the detective who was pretty much set that this was a case closed, he said that a couple of months after the murder happened, Mark Winger came to the police station to collect his gun because it was no longer needed for evidence. But he asked a weird question. He asked the detective, hey, how is the case going? Which is a weird way to ask that because you should know, right? I mean, the case is closed. Roger killed your wife. You killed Roger in self-defense. Why would you ask that question? He didn't really think much of it. It just seemed like a weird question at the time. But now he's thinking back once this woman comes in and says, oh, wait a minute, maybe there are some red flags here. And so the detectives of this case reopen it. They now are suspicious that Mark Winger may have actually orchestrated this entire thing. So they reopen the box and they're going through all the evidence and they're looking through all the crime scene photos and they see something weird. They see a couple of photos of the way the bodies were placed. He noticed that based off of Mark's statements that Roger Harrington's body was lying in a completely different position than what he said. He was lying in 180 degrees opposite of what Mark said. Based off of the placement of the bodies, they were able to, and looking at these photos again, they're like, something is very off here. Then they found out that that little note in Roger Harrington's car was in fact a scribbled down note about an appointment that Roger Harrington had with Mark Winger. Well, what they would find out was that it was actually Mark Winger who contacted the shuttle van company and said, hey, can I get the contact information for Roger Harrington? I want to see if we can have some sort of conversation and just sort of kind of figure things out here. And so that post-it note was literally the time that Mark Winger asked Roger Harrington to come to his home. Mark Winger gave Roger Harrington his address. Mark Winger thought kind of on the fly. This was not a pre-planned thing in terms of using Roger. This conversation he had with his wife about this uncomfortable ride she had really kind of kicked his mind into action. Like, oh, this is perfect. I can use this as a way to set this guy up for revenge. Especially since Roger Harrington didn't go to the house with anything on him in terms of a weapon. Then, based on the photos of the body's positioning, they would have blood spatter experts relook at everything. So it appeared that Roger was lying face down as he was initially shot at the top of his head. So he was lying down already. Then, based on another pool of blood, it looked as if Roger's body had then been flipped over by someone else. And then another gunshot went into Roger's forehead. And if the bodies were really that close to each other, there should have been blood spatter on Donnah's shirt. It should have been Roger's blood from the cast-off of the gunshot. But the only blood on Donnah's clothing was her own. Roger Harrington's clothing, once retested, did not have a single trace of Donnah's blood. This would be impossible. For him to strike her over the head at close contact with a hammer, to not have any of her blood on him, that can't happen. And then if he was shot right next to Donnah, Donnah should have had his blood on her. There was none. But when re-examining the clothing Mark was wearing that day, they did have blood spatter. Donnah's blood spatter was on Mark's shirt. Spatter that was consistent with a blunt force trauma injury over the head, like with a hammer. That now places the hammer in Mark Winger's hand, not Roger Harrington's. So now Mark Winger is arrested and he is charged with not just the murder of Roger Harrington, but also the murder of his wife Donnah. At his trial, they had testimony from Deanne, who stated that there was an affair. It was happening well before there was ever a murder, that Mark had talked about wanting to kill Donnah several times. Then they had the shuttle company testify that it was actually Mark who arranged Roger to come to his home. And Roger himself, he had troubles in his life. He had psychiatric issues. He wasn't a killer. He had issues. He had problems. Apparently, he had been abusive before to a past lover. But the fact of the matter is he was kooky. He had some psychological issues, but he wasn't a killer. And he went there under the pretense that he was going to be able to get his job back, which was not true. With all the evidence now pointing just to Mark, with the blood evidence, the DNA, the blood spatter analysis, the positioning of the body looking like the bodies had been moved and replaced, everything clearly now pointed to Mark Winger being the shooter and the one with the hammer in his hand. The jury deliberated for about 15 or so hours, and they came back with a verdict of guilty. He was guilty of the murders of Donnah Winger and Roger Harrington. He would be sentenced to life in prison without parole. 3 years into his sentence, Mark Winger, apparently he had some grudges to settle. So an inmate at the prison he was in would come forward to police about a murder for hire plot. You see, Mark Winger was planning to murder Deanne Schultz and his former father-in-law, Ira Drescher, Donnah's father. The inmate would then work with police, and he would document a whole bunch of, he would write in a journal about everything Mark was saying and asking. He also secretly recorded conversations with the police involved. And so in 2007, Mark Winger was then indicted and charged with 2 counts of solicitation to commit murder. His trial was quick. The jury came back after only 3 hours and said, yeah, no, you're guilty of this as well. And they added on an additional 35 years to his life without parole sentence. Mark Winger is now going to be in prison for the rest of his life. He is going to die alone in a prison cell. He destroyed 2 families. He left his daughter without any parents. He tried to paint one person as a monster who wasn't really the monster. It was Mark who was truly that monster. And now Mark is exactly where he deserves to be, and he will rot in hell after that. Roger Harrington was not perfect. He had some troubles. He did spook Donnah. That was a real story. But he was not a killer. He was not a murderer. He did not have that in his blood. And they know now he did not kill Donnah. 2 families shattered forever who will never have their loved ones back. But at least they can all know comfortably that their loved ones both got the justice they very rightfully deserved. But that is it for this case, True Crime Rooney Dooney Dingleberry Dongs. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, if you're new here, hello, my name is Mike. I tell true crime stories here on YouTube, obviously. So please subscribe if you're into that kind of thing. You can hit the bell so you're notified when I post new videos. Drop a like, leave a comment. That way more people can see the videos. I also tell short form true crime stories over on TikTok. You can find the link to my TikTok in the link tree in the description of this video below, so feel free to follow that if you want. Also in that link tree, you will find my case list. It's public. You guys can scroll through it. It's alphabetical for the most part. If you do not see a name on that list that you would like me to cover, all you have to do is send me a quick email. My email is also listed below in the description. Just the name of the case, where it happened, and when it happened. I'll add it to the list. I can't promise you when I'll cover that case because I do typically pick cases at random, but I will get to it eventually, I promise. But with that being said, that is it for this case, True Crime Rooney. So until the next one, ta-ta for now. Weird.